Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week, recorded in the before time of fall 2019, is Andy Kindler, a beloved stand-up comedian whose state-of-the-industry addresses have become an essential part of Just for Laughs Montreal, and whose alt shows have become just as essential to JFL 42 here in Toronto. He also hosts the Thought Spiral podcast with J. Elvis Weinstein. He's appeared as an actor on Everybody Loves Raymond, Marin, Raising Dad, and I'm Dying Up Here, and of course he's a regular presence on Lauren Bouchard's animated series, including Dr. Katz Professional Therapist, home movies, and currently Bob's Burgers, where he plays Mort. It was an absolute blast to sit down with him back when it was possible to just, sit down with people. Andy picked The Big Picture, the 1989 comedy that marked the directorial debut of Christopher Guest. It's a Hollywood satire that follows film student, though it's not like any of his other movies. This one's a Hollywood satire following film student Nick Chapman, played by Kevin Bacon, as he tries to get his first feature off the ground after winning a Student Film Award and almost immediately loses himself to the machinery of the studio system. It's a surprisingly gentle work from Guest, who mostly resists the broader stuff for a low-key observational comedy about temptation and integrity. And also, he assembles a wonderful cast that includes Jennifer Jason Leigh, Emily Longstreth, Michael McKeon, who also co-wrote the script, J.T. Walsh, Terry Hatcher, and Martin Short. It's one of those little gems that slipped through the cracks at the time, but it hasn't really lost a step since. It just needs a little love. This is Someone Else's Movie.
The Big Picture, I came out to Los Angeles in 78, and we don't have to get into ages, you know what I mean? Is it about how old I am? Apparently it is.
I was considerably younger.
Yes, you were considerably, and I think you should throw that in there, just so people know that you're talking to someone from a different generation out of sympathy. So, so I moved out to LA in 78, and I was a musician. And then I wanted to be a comedian. I didn't know. I was a musician, but I didn't do well as a musician. And I tried to make a living. And then I got into comedy. And so I got into comedy in 1986. And I was in a duo. And I went on my own in 1987. No, 84, 86 on my own. And then The Big Picture came out. And so there were these like seminal movies for me that was like was for someone who didn't grow up in Los Angeles. So this movie and was just starting to get into, I had done like maybe a TV thing or two. So these things were now relevant to me, how the business was.
Sure, yeah.
And I didn't, it's like, I didn't know, I knew all the references. It wasn't like it was so inside, but like like when he doesn't know that the people at the studio have been changed. And so he comes and he has no idea how that's going to affect him.
Sure, yeah.
As I'm watching that movie, I didn't know how it was going to affect him either. And then the other big one was Fast Times, which I think was way earlier, right?
Yeah, 81.
Yeah. But those two movies represented L.A. to me. But also The Big Picture is just, I saw it in the theater.
Right.
And it's one of my, there aren't really a whole bunch of great comedies that are also about something, which I think they did an amazing job. It was a little bit high. I thought there was really, like, the reality was very, they played everything small. And so Martin Short's character, these lines, to me, are the classic lines. I'm not talking to you. I'll call you.
Yes.
And he goes, did you notice his look when I said a drink to him? Did you notice the look on his face?
Yeah, the insecurity and the arrogance and the sense of schmoozery that goes on constantly. I mean, there was. I mean, it felt to me like it was an extension of the character he had on Saturday Night Live, Nathan Thurm, right?
Yeah,
where he was with Christopher Guest, where they.
I didn't know that's how
that was the connection. I think Guest used Short in a lot of his short films that he did for SNL. There's that great one about the synchronized swimmers, the two brothers.
I love that one.
That was the first time I think I ever saw them working together, and you can just tell right away.
Shearer was in that one, right?
I think Shearer was the brother who was driving the whole thing, and then there's just this wonderful little cut to it's either Shearer or Guest who's espousing their philosophy, and I think it's Shearer. We're very focused, and we do this, and we do that, and we do this, and then the camera pans like a quarter inch over to Short, who's just sitting there quietly and says, I'm not very strong a swimmer. And that formulation has always stayed with me. It's so weird. 5 years later, it's just still really funny.
When I was in a comedy duo, we did, and I don't know when his thing came out, like he cares, but we did synchronized comedy.
Okay.
So good. And so it was like good evening. It wasn't the greatest bit we did, but it was a bit. It was a lot of times I used to see things like on Saturday Night Live where I was like, I used to do the lounge singer at parties because then Bill Murray came.
Sure. It's that zeitgeist thing, right? I mean, it's floating around out there, and eventually someone grabs it. And nowadays, it isn't on Saturday Night Live. It's not validated, right? Like it's just a bit. But then, Kate McKinnon does Hillary Clinton, and it all just coalesces into this is the definitive Hillary Clinton impersonation. And then she doesn't win, and everybody's just like, fuck, what do we do? Where do we put this character?
Well, yeah, that's true. But also, it's like, it's unbelievable how many great people have ended up on that show that's run by a guy who's like the Wizard of Oz to me, right?
Yeah.
Don't look behind his screen.
Yeah,
right?
no, Lord Michaels is fascinating.
And he's like Zelig in a way.
Yeah. He's still and quiet, and he's everywhere. Like he's waiting for a chance to strike and grab talent.
Well, I said during the last, because they got an Emmy, and I said he's the only person who can suck all of the air out of the room while being a blowhard. But I don't want to affect your relationship with him.
Well, we're not that close. I wouldn't worry.
You feel free not to include anything because I do go after. I go after Jay Leno. You don't care about him.
No, you do you. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. The effect. I do think that Guest being on Saturday Night Live is kind of a turning point in his career because it's where he learned what he didn't want to do. He was right off Spinal Tap. He went into this thing where they were reconfiguring the show, and it was going to be.
Ebersol was in charge that year or something? Was that the? No, it wasn't Ebersol. It was a woman.
Just gotten fired, right? It was because it was after
woman, Christine. That woman. I sound like a misogynist. That woman who was a friend, Jean Doumanian.
Oh, that was the early '80s. I remember that year.
Okay.
That was the year. The one thing she did right by consensus was that I think she hired Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo.
Oh, okay.
But then everything.
Not so much Piscopo.
But at the time,
he was great. Yeah.
But then they all left, and they rebooted with 1 year where they went with Guest and Short and oh no, I'm getting this wrong. They rebooted. It was the year with Robert Downey Jr. that no one remembers. And then the following
I don't remember
year,
that at all.
Yeah, maybe it was the same year. I'm going to look this up. I'm actually going to Wikipedia this. Right, this was the year of, what a bizarre mixture. Okay, so season 10, 1984 to 1985. Jim Belushi, Billy Crystal, Mary Gross, Christopher Guest, Rich Hall, Gary Kroger, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Harry Shearer, who lasted half a season, Martin Short, and Pamela Stevenson.
I don't know Pamela Stevenson. Do you?
Yeah, she was. She's a British actress. She married subsequently. She's married to Billy Connolly for forever.
Oh,
and
wow.
She was in Superman 3 and in a bimbo role. Basically, was the biggest exposure she'd had. But she was also a member of Not the 9 O'Clock News in the UK. So she was a fairly talented comic, which again they never gave her anything to do.
Yeah, because the fish rots from the head down.
Seems like it.
And Lorne Michaels. So Lorne Michaels was back though at this time, right?
This was Dick Ebersol's year. I think Michaels may have still been the executive producer.
Oh well, yeah. But I know Harry was on when Lorne Michaels was there.
Yeah.
So that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, this was Dick Ebersol's year after Jean Dominion. It was the regrouping year after Eddie Murphy left.
Right.
So.
And then later, Ebersol had OJ stay at his house.
That's right. Isn't that why they fired Miller in the end? Because he was making too many.
No, I think they fired Norm Macdonald in the end. But who knows? Well, he says that's not why. But who knows?
Yeah, it always seemed like a pretty straight line. He was going after Michael Jackson and O.J. Simpson, and
then
wasn't ready yet.
Ebersol was rooming with them, but
yeah. So Guest does Saturday Night Live.
Right.
Same year, Spinal Tap comes out, and obviously that's why they went after Guest and Shearer.
Yeah.
But it's so clear that he goes from this place of total creative freedom into a space where he's not really valued for his skills as a writer. I mean, he was left alone to go off and make his own weird short films and things like that. So he's already being creative, but he's come from this massive
huge
cult hit. I mean, it wasn't financially huge, but
it was culturally huge.
Yeah. And then does Saturday Night Live, and then it's and then just starts, leaves the show after a year, keeps working with Rob Reiner, and then eventually, as Reiner's star starts to rise as a filmmaker, he goes off and makes this little tiny movie on his own with his friends, and it sort of echoes the experience of the movie that we're watching, because that is ultimately the lesson that Bacon's character learns.
Right.
But it always struck me as such a specific declaration of independence on his own artistic path. It's Rob Reiner is making, I was in The Princess Bride and I'll show up in this thing and I know he's working on that thing, but I want to do this for myself. and
Right.
then comes out and no one knows what to do with it.
Yeah, I can see. To me, it's like I never go to movies ever thinking about. I don't go to the movies basically because I don't mind comic books, but I'm more into like Harvey Pekar and Daniel Klaus and that kind of thing. So I know I'll watch one of these superhero deals, but I'm not gonna. I don't think I will. I just haven't watched one yet. But and I don't disrespect it. It's just that's the way the whole industry has gone.
Yeah.
So, but it wasn't like in '89 there were a lot of movies like The Big Picture either, right? Because this is post Jaws and still hard to find. I saw a lot of really great movies in the theater that were not huge box office movies, but were like so seminal in my life. And Fast Times was the first one. Did that do well?
I think it was a hit. Yeah. Mostly driven by the soundtrack, but I think it did. It was successful box office wise.
And the thing I was telling you about Martin Short in the film is like he sends a drink to someone and he asks the waiter, "Did you see his look when I gave him the drink?" he looked, and then there's another scene that makes me laugh so hard is when he looks in the mirror of the car while he's driving, and he starts to adjust his, and then he almost gets an accident and he comes back.
Yeah, and he can do that stuff so well. He can just sort of, there's this dead-eyed thing he has where it's just so clear his brain has shut itself off for the sake of the joke, whatever's going on. It was fairly common with SCTV performances for some reason. You can see it here and there on the TV show where they just kind of go blank for a second, and it's almost like they're waiting for the joke to land. But Short weaponizes it. So yeah, he has that scene where he's just completely, he goes away while he's driving, or when he's, I will fight for you, I will kill for you.
Yes,
that
right.
whole speech where he narrows it down again, and you get this laser focus, which is clearly a performance. Like it's the character performing.
Right. Oh,
but
yeah.
It's so transparent. It's great.
He might be the greatest. I mean, I have so many favorites that I can't say he's my favorite. But when it comes to lampooning this business called show, that kind of thing, let me tell you about this guy in the children's hospitals, and he nails it. I think he does 3 Jerry Lewis's. Martin Short. He does the old Jerry Lewis and the lozenge Jerry Lewis, and it's like I've said this so many millions of times that it's cliche for me to say it, but that was what I was influenced by was this Canadian comedy.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize that Saturday Night Live had so many people from Second City.
Yeah.
And it really is this. You're part of America, but you're not really part of it, so you can even more look at it sarcastically.
Yeah, we see the moving parts. I think is how it works.
And I like to say that's how I base my comedy. It's the same exact thing that I share with those people, and it's like, to me, it's like coming home or something like that. I can't even explain it. It's like, and his thing permeates throughout the whole movie, but there's so many things in the movie. There's so many things in the movie that are. It's like it would be a funny movie if it was just Martin Short's character, but the other parts come together. And that's very hard. I think that's extremely hard to do. Like Jennifer Jason Leigh has this line. It's one of my favorite. Am I allowed to curse?
Sure.
Okay. She says. He goes, Kevin, they both went to film school together. So he says, "So what you been doing?" She goes, "I've been making the movie about, people who take the shopping carts from the supermarket. It's like, why do they do it and what do they do with it? But then it just got so fucking boring."
Yeah. She was almost happy when she says it, right? Like
Yes.
It was an excuse to stop.
Do you think there was a lot of ad-libbing in that movie?
I think with Guest, you've got to be free to. He's got to, it's his only mode now, right? Like he doesn't script anything anymore. I think they were definitely working from a screenplay because there's kind of expository dialogue that really hammers down, especially in the industry stuff. That's very precise and it feels like it was shaped. But then there's we're going to meet my neighbors where she just sings about taking bacon next door.
Yeah.
And it's just like that. No one came up with that. There's like, that predates Phoebe from Friends. Like that's the creation of that character right there. And it's Jennifer Jason Leigh just goofing around.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever seen her be like this was.
She was. I just realized she was the lead in Fast Times, right?
Fast Times, yeah. Miami Blues too. A couple years after this, She's just got this amazing presence and spark in the 80s, and then she became much more serious-minded. And she's great at what she does, but the comedy stuff is just, it comes up a little bit in Good Time, the movie she made with the Safdie brothers, with Robert Pattinson a couple years ago.
I didn't see that.
She's got this sort of, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a self-deprecating lack of self-consciousness and unself-consciousness where she's just perfectly prepared to be whatever the scene needs to get the laugh. And that aspect of her is just so cool.
There was a movie they made with some like comics that I did alternative comedy with, like Mary Lynn Ricecub and Karen Kilgariff, and it was like it took place at their home in like the Hollywood Hills, and there's that actor who I see all the time. He's from Scotland, maybe.
Alan Cumming, right? The anniversary party. Yeah, the anniversary party. This was like 15 years ago.
Right, and I knew a lot of I knew like Mary Lynn Ricecub and Karen Kilgariff are two comedians, and they have them performing guitar at this party, and they're taking ecstasy or whatever. And I remember there's been movies that I like that I always think, am I projecting too much into it because it's really in my wheelhouse. So like that movie I loved because it was all about Hollywood and all this stuff. And then I loved Henry Jaglam's movie, which was Always But Not Forever.
Oh, it was called. That one. That's one of the later ones,
right? No, it's one of the. I think. When you say later, what do you mean?
I'm thinking like 90s.
I think it's earlier than that because he Bob Rafelson. Who's the guy from Bob Rafelson?
From director of Five Easy Pieces.
Yes, he was in it, and Jacqueline's in it. Is Jacqueline normally in his movies?
Yeah, not for a while. Yeah, I must have missed this one. I mostly only.
They changed the name of it a couple of times.
Oh, okay.
So it's about him breaking up with this woman, and the acting is amazing. I think it's a really great movie. I mean,
is it Somebody to Love? Is that what it was?
Is it may have been in it. What's that?
Is David Duchovny in it? Like a young Duchovny?
He might be.
This is where we limits of my knowledge. I have no idea.
Yeah, but I loved anything that I just loved that it was based on.
It's like that Hollywood Hills lifestyle.
Yeah, I just loved it.
Unhappy insiders. I think the reason the big picture resonates more for me is that having never lived in LA but spent enough time there to know I don't want to. The big picture starts by establishing how smart it is so quickly with those short films, with the student films.
Yes.
Where it just tells you exactly how pretentious this one is or exactly how silly this one is. You know, and it's that thing that Guest has clearly done himself. He's made things he's ashamed of. You can feel it, like stuff that didn't work. And then I just remember the opening shot of Cross Sabers of Truth, the one that Daniel Roebuck directs. And how it opens in widescreen, and even theatrically the aspect ratio changes when you're watching it. And I remember thinking, oh, that's clever. That's just I think that was the first time I'd seen someone use aspect ratio as a meta function, commenting on.
See, I don't even remember. That's because yours more tuned in, obviously, the movies. So I don't even remember. I remember the movies.
But you remember the cart, right? The character lying dead on the cart.
Yeah,
it shifts down a little bit to be in scope because that's obviously the best way to shoot war. And it just tells you everything about the mindset of this filmmaker before we ever even know what the title of his film is. It's just it's so great.
And J.T. Walsh plays like, it's almost... what's it called when it's a fable, or it's like it's like the
an apocryphal
it's just like he's so evil, and yet he can be charming in that movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like he really knows how to work. And I love
sort of Studio Barracuda kind of.
He's a Studio Barracuda, and one of the favorite lines is when his name is Nick or something, or in the movie Kevin Bacon's name, and someone says he made that Pez thing, and they go, "Oh, it's the best one Nick ever," but they say his name wrong.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's the best one ever,
and they just blow past it.
Yeah.
I love that, and that casual. There are things that I'm convinced that Guest just had a bad meeting and went out and took notes, like immediately wrote it down. It's we want to shoot this in black and white. Oh, you can't. No, movie theaters can't show black and white anymore. All the projectors are in color. And someone else immediately says, yes. Like, dead, flat, yes.
Yes.
That's his purpose. I remember thinking, this is so painfully accurate to something. Like, it just, sometimes when you're watching a small movie and you feel that this is like the first novel where the author has put everything into the page because they don't know if they're ever going to get another chance.
I think you're right, though, about where it came from the heart like that.
Yeah.
And how sweet is Michael McKean's character?
I know.
It's so like a sweet. I mean, this guy's a great. I mean, obviously, I'm I'm not the first person to discover that he's an amazing actor, but he's so great in this movie because I think that part of the movie is the hardest part that to pull off.
So the deterioration of the friendship under professional
and
circumstances.
he wants him to get out of the car. And then at one point when he's talking, and he said, "Yeah, I had to go with this other cinematographer." And Michael McKean said, "Oh no, he's good. I fought for you." And then later he admits that he did not fight for him.
Yeah,
it's not an easy. That was like not a comedy part really for Michael McKean.
No, he has to play wounded pride, and he has to play understanding, and he does get that beautiful redemption arc of all the characters. Like Nick really doesn't. Nick is kind of his head gets turned, he gets distracted, and then he fumbles his way back into decency. Right?
Yeah,
like he's held to account rather than changing himself.
Right.
Because it comes down to his partner, to Emily Longstreth, this wonderful actor who barely registered. We were just talking before this recording started. Her last movie was made in 1994, and she's more or less just disappeared. But she is so good as Susan. I think it's Susan. I'm going to double check because I think I'm an idiot. Susan. She's so pure and good as Nick's girlfriend, partner. They're not married, but they're together. Susan, who we were talking before about this beautiful introduction where she says, someone asks her what she does at a party, and she says, "I'm a homemaker," and he just comes in and says, "She's an architect." And you just get a sense of how smart she is, right? And how playful their relationship is, and how much how he's the one who's actually doing more to promote her in that moment because she just doesn't care.
Yes.
And that felt, and the way that he endangers the relationships that are so important to him, which is the partner and the cinematographer and the school friend, all of these things that are inevitably, like in any narrative of success, they're the things you leave behind.
And definitely, whatever you've done in your life, you can relate to going the route that you shouldn't go, whether it was in junior high school, whether it was in your career or whatever. The idea that you convincing yourself that, oh, it's okay what I'm doing, but you're really screwing over everybody you cared about going in.
Yeah, it's not even a moral compromise. It's just a compromise. Like you're just immediately sort of cutting off an entire side of yourself.
Yeah, you say, I got to go. I got and I felt, I remember when I first started as a comic, like, you know, I can't imagine when I was like fighting for someone. If I was in like, they wanted me to do the Andy Kindler show, but then but you have to get rid of your manager. I've been with the same manager since 1989. Wow. So I've been lucky in a lot of ways of avoiding the classic things that people do. But it's hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. And when he gives up, like he goes right into. Oh, but one other thing I want to say. I'm sorry, I'm ADHD.
No worries.
The girlfriend.
Also, ADDDDHD is the best description of condition that I've ever heard.
I know. It's obvious I've never looked it up because I don't have I have a joke. I don't have the focus to find out what the initials stand for. But the other scene that I love is the scene where he gets his girlfriend back, and he's making her like a grilled cheese sandwich, and it's just such a small scene, but it's like. I just think it's very hard to be that funny and then go back and then, like you say, you immediately related to their relationship.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm really surprised. Maybe she went to, like she just got tired of acting.
Yeah, maybe she's on stage for some reason.
But she was so, first of all, I thought she was beautiful in that movie too, and nice and sweet.
Yeah, she's got a great, she works with Bacon really well. The two of them have a great chemistry. You believe they've been together for a long time, but not too long. Like they're not bored of each other. They still kind of enjoy each other's company, and they're young, but they're young in the right way. Like they're both, they're not naive anymore, but they're still sprightly. I don't know how to describe it.
Would you say his acting is underrated?
Oh, I think absolutely. Yeah. Not like
except Footloose, but that you can't go by. He was even good in Footloose.
He's pretty good in Footloose,
he is
right?
Like he's not bad in anything he's done.
No, that's what I mean. Like he's an unimpeachable actor. You see him in stuff like A Few Good Men, and he's good in that. He doesn't have anything to do, but he's good. And Bacon has always been the guy who just refuses to turn in a bad performance or coast. Or as he gets older, his face has aged in a really interesting way.
Yeah,
like stuff like Hollow Man, where he's like pure villainy, and mostly just a voice.
Is that a scary movie?
Yeah, it's the Verhoeven Invisible Man movie from like 2000. It's terrible.
Oh, okay.
But he refuses to undersell it. Like he commits and he gives a real performance.
It's such a hard thing to pull off too.
Yeah, well, the big picture does that too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it plays with ideas and like a toy, like it just goofs on stuff. But then suddenly you're hit with the reality that the people making these movies have lives and that they're all being infringed upon by the project, and that everybody's at the whim of somebody else. Like Nick doesn't have a lot of authority, but when he does use it, he makes bad choices in the first half.
He really does.
Yeah, like
Doesn't he try to hold to his concept first, right? With the black and white?
Yeah,
right.
Meetings, and then it's immediately shot down.
And then the scene that's like, to me, because I kind of made I'm not saying I have a career, but I made quote, career out of saying what's wrong with comedy, you know? Yeah. And that scene where he when he does finally change it, and they're like, babes, it's like beach bingo, whatever it is. Yeah. It's so great. It's so hilarious to me.
Well, it's cynical and frustrated, which is where comedy comes from. I think. Like you can really feel, again, you feel like Guest has had a moment like this, that he's just been forced into a condition that he absolutely doesn't want to do, and puts on the stupidest, happiest face and just gets there.
Yeah.
And you can feel like it's the whole smiling clown thing, right? Like he's really sad, but he's so good at setting it up so that we're kind of with Nick for the first half of the film. Like,
yes.
We're on side. It's like, well, this is the compromise. These are all the...
And Terry Hatcher's beautiful.
Yeah, sure.
So you really are like... I remember watching the movie going, well, I'd like, how could I... Maybe you could balance all this stuff out.
Yeah, Hatcher was such an underrated presence, too. Like, she's in that and Tango and Cash in the same year.
Wow.
Everyone forgets she's Kurt Russell's sister she's Stallone's sister in Tango and Cash. And she's completely used as just a body in that film.
Yeah.
The movie has no time for her. Kurt Russell falls in love with her and they flirt a little bit, but it's just like she's the girl in that movie.
And in the other, and in
the big picture, she's just used, like there's some intelligence allowed, there's some emotional space. She's obviously the wrong person for Nick. Like we never believe it for a second. But she's allowed to be a human being, which I found really interesting.
And also really playing, I mean, all these people must have drawn from the fact that this is the business they're in. But I don't think I remember many, well, I'm sure over the course of history there's been a lot of movies made about movies. Sure. But that was one of the first movies I saw made about the current set, because there were like things like music videos were popular then, so they made that. I love this line where Jennifer Jason Leigh introduces Kevin Bacon to this band, and he goes, "Do they have any money?" He goes, "No." He goes, "Perfect."
Yeah.
And so I love that. He was like ready when he was down and out to do anything.
Yeah, but also I think there's that small acknowledgement that he knows he'll be able to do whatever he wants, right? Because they can't control him.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny you said that. I did kind of get that emotionally, that I didn't take it like he was going, oh, great. But I didn't quite get the perfect that then he would be able to do what he wanted to do. I didn't get that insight.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought it'd be, he gets to have fun.
But it's the same thing, right?
Yeah,
Like nobody's going to make him do anything and nobody's going to hold him hostage. He's just, I think that's just Bacon, right? The ability to suggest those layers and in one line of dialogue. That's why he's so good at character stuff.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. Yeah. I mean, I won't say I listened to the Bacon Brothers. That's where
That's the line.
Well, I don't know.
What if there was a movie about them? There must be. They must have made a documentary about themselves by now, right?
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's like I was on Conan once with the Bacon Brothers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if I got to meet him. I don't know much about their music really, but it's good that he gets along with his brother really good.
Sure.
Too. Sure. It's always weird because I started out as a musician. It must be the hardest thing in the world to, like, I haven't been playing guitar as much as I'd like to, but you could just see any time you're known for something else, it's got to be hard to all of a sudden.
Yeah. If Kevin Bacon wants to go and play music and release a couple of albums, good for you.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
You know who has a great album out? Mare Winningham.
Oh, I didn't know that.
From St. Elmo's Fire. She released it. I found it in Tower Records in L.A. years and years ago. And did she put an album out? And it's actually really good.
Well, I heard I didn't know Catherine O'Hare's sister was so amazing.
Oh my God, she's a legend.
I know that she started that. She was a musician.
You're in Canada. We know this.
I knew that. I knew you would know that.
Yeah.
But I couldn't believe her. Her songwriting is amazing.
She's fantastic. It's one of those things where they're talented families, and they're these little burps that somebody becomes a megastar for one thing, and then it
Yeah.
eclipses everyone else. And I guess maybe that's part of the Bacon Brothers thing too, right? It's like, well, come on, we can go play music. We just have to trade on my name.
Right.
But he seems like he's okay with it. Like Kevin seems like he's okay with it. The brother seems like he's okay with it. They're just like, this is a thing they do.
Well, yeah, I don't think he's like he doesn't seem like someone who's. He seems like someone who's. You know what? I always make the mistake of, though. I don't really know of these people, but I assume that they're together. He seems like a very nice guy to me,
Yeah.
so I hope he is.
I think if you last this long,
Yeah.
you stay married this long, and all those things,
Right.
hopefully that works
Is
out.
his wife an actor too?
Pierre Sedgwick.
Oh, that's right. This is a perfect. Why? Look at the two hot people together. It brings joy to my heart.
It does, right?
Although Kevin Bacon is he's a weird looking guy, but he's in no way looks like a classic lead.
Sure, yeah.
And
Well, he's always had kind of an oval face, and then he's aged into this no body fat thing where he can be like, it's great for heavy roles, for villain roles, because he looks threatening. But then he smiles, and it's like, oh no, I get it. It's all right.
Well, now when I watch Friends, I know it's off topic, but when I watch Friends, is like the fact that there are that many white people. And that it did not at the time strike me as odd.
Sure.
Now it strikes me as just crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's everything from that era of sitcoms, right? There were. If there were black actors on sitcoms, they were on a different world. They were literally in their own show, right?
That's right.
So nobody even thought about it. And it doesn't make it right at all, but
No.
the reflection we're getting is of white America in the early 1990s, because it was Clinton and, it was post-Bush.
Right.
It was good white people instead of rednecks. Somehow that became a thing.
I used to joke in my act about how how bad the business was. Is like if a show with black people in it failed, like in that time period, they go, oh, well, we tried black people.
Yeah, exactly. That was it.
But meanwhile, how many white people shows are failing? You don't, I can't work with the white people anymore. No one wants to watch. It's so amazing how different that world was.
Even, is there a person of color in the big picture? I can't remember. I think there's.
I do not think so. I don't remember that there's no black people in Woody Allen movies until it was pointed out to me.
Sure. Oh, well, here, I've basically just gone and looked at
one of the assistants was.
There's Don Franklin, I think. Todd Marvin.
Yes, he was excellent because he was trying to find him and go find him. And then because the part of the movie I love is like, well, it's not like the best part of the movie, but they go out because he's trying to reconnect with his girlfriend. He goes out and he doesn't return his phone calls for 3 hours, and all of a sudden people think he's trying to avoid them because he's taken off again.
Right. It makes them hot again.
Yes.
Yeah, which is, again, like that perfect level of superficiality that the whole movie is commenting on all the time. And I wonder if that was a story that Guest heard.
Yeah.
Somewhere. It's like, oh, I got food poisoning and I couldn't answer my phone, and all of a sudden I'm hot again. The script went into turnaround because of some weird incident.
Right. Did he write the movie? We don't know if he wrote it.
I think he rewrote it.
Okay.
Guest and McKeon co-wrote it with Michael Varho, who also has a story credit on it with Guest. So yeah, it was his baby all along.
Wow, because I can't think of most of his movies don't have that emotional range, really.
No, he's not. He's usually not interested.
Not into it,
right? Like the only one I can think of is there's a love story underneath Best in Show where the two trainers get together. But the only one that I really think has any emotional weight of a Guest film is Mitch and Mickey in
Guffman?
No, Mighty Wind. Mitch and Mickey.
Oh, yes.
Whether or not they'll actually take the kiss at the end of their song, and somehow because it's Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, and they are like stone professionals, they build that with looks, they build that with hesitations. It's there. They're bringing it out, but they make it into this massive romantic epic.
Yeah,
between the two of them exclusively. I remember seeing that in a theater and going, "Oh my God, my heart is in my mouth." How did that happen? This is a comedy. And
I wonder if that ending is going to hold up though, where Harry Shearer has a sex change.
Oh God, no!
It's not going to hold up.
No, I think that's done already.
It's done.
How about that?
Isn't
so
it
many
weird?
Things that we thought were funny 10 years ago.
Well, it's like when I was a kid, I would hear these things from vaudeville or whatever. Like, I didn't even know what they meant. Like, nice to see you back in men's clothes.
Right.
It's like, these things are no longer appropriate. I mean, and I don't even mean PC wise.
No,
it's just like we were an ignorant society, and now. So I don't think they would even write that ending now.
God, no.
Right?
No. I mean, there's the stuff that we're dealing with now. I think is so. I don't even know how to frame it. The stuff that we're dealing with in comedy, or what is considered comic, has changed for the better, I think.
Yes.
We're in a place now where, just the idea that punching up instead of punching down is the defining mode of comedy, that's great. I mean, it always has been, but now we're actually acknowledging how that works, and you can, when something doesn't work, you can point to it and say, oh, well, this is why. We have a vocabulary for it. And the idea that, Dan Harmon brings up Revenge of the Nerds all the time as a comedy that he really liked in 1987, and then he saw it again as an adult and was horrified because of how.
Oh, I never saw that movie.
Oh, it's just misogynist and ableist. It's every ist there is.
Right.
And it's all couched in the idea that, oh, the little guys are getting back at the jocks. It's like, no, they're being hateful, and I think that's rape in that one scene, and I'm pretty sure this isn't right either.
Wow.
The morals of it are so vile, and it's simply the excuse that the little guy getting it back will make it all
open up
okay,
the door
right?
for these.
It's all
these
fine.
other
We're
jokes.
making a movie about the underdog, and it's like, oh God, no. Like Animal House is also pretty gross, but it's also set in 1963 and made in 78, so you have this idea that you can at least say, well, we're looking back at terrible morality. At these guys.
The Stephen Bishop scene will always work.
Oh, the guitar.
Yeah,
no,
that to me is like that to me summed up why Dylan went electric. You know what I mean? It's like my beloved cherry. No, but it really is amazing. And that's why I don't buy into this whole cancel culture thing. It makes me so angry. Like I was watching the news and Don Lem's like, he goes, I'm tired of this cancel culture thing. You're tired of something you've now defined as a thing. Yeah. It's like calling someone a neoliberal. You're only using that word to say, oh, you're a neoliberal. So now you're saying we agree that this exists.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that there isn't cancel, that the people haven't been canceled improperly or said one thing and went too far or whatever. But that doesn't mean that... It doesn't mean that's a movement now. What you said, I think, is true. It's for the good that we're punching up,
Yeah, well, I think, as far as cancel culture goes, it's not like everybody keeps thinking that, or everyone keeps framing it as though it's destroying, like the defenders of people who have been, quote unquote, canceled always say, oh, you've ruined his career. And it's like, well, he still had, like, Louis C.K.'s still a millionaire. He still has all his money.
Yeah.
He's just kind of a creep now. Like, we know that. I don't necessarily need to see his comedy anymore. I certainly don't need to see all his comedy about how he's a great feminist and a good guy and all that.
Yeah, right.
What happened, it's like with Cosby. You just see this, you've gotten a look at what's really there. It's horrible, and I don't want to see it anymore. That's not, like, he's perfectly free to go out and do the shows and be booed and whatever else happens.
Absolutely right. And that's the thing is...
It's not an impediment to his career, except that people know he's a shitty person.
Yeah, people are allowed to not... You're allowed to, like, comics... In fact, Louis C.K. would be one of the comics who... there was a time period when Tracy Morgan, when he would do stand-up, would just say horrible things. Mm-hmm. He's a funny person, but his stand-up was just pretty terrible.
Well, he was, like, trolling for offense, right? Like, that was the bit.
And I think that's when he said, I'll kill my kid if he's... Louis was always protecting that, like the stage is a magic eraser place. You have the right to say whatever you want, and people have the right to hate it.
Yeah,
And I mean, not to heckle, to heckle, but they have the right to say, I don't want to, to me, if people want to shut down Fox News because it's the home of racism, I say that's great. Target those advertisers.
Sure.
It's basically the people you've been making fun of all these years with easy. And that's also true about fat shaming. I have a friend, Sophie Hagen, who wrote a really great book. She's a comedian. She wrote a really great book called Happy Fat. Mm-hmm. And if you now you look back, that's the one kind of last area where people have always felt, oh, I can make fun of fat people. But the fact that all these things are going away doesn't mean there's not going to be any comedy.
No.
It means that you're going to have to up your game.
Yeah, I think it makes the material more interesting when you actually have to work and find observations that aren't hateful, right?
Exactly.
Hate, obviously hate sells. It's very popular right now. But it's not inherently funny. And just the idea that, oh, we can't talk about this because of political correctness. It's like, well, no, you can't talk about it. You can talk about it. We just get to say, oh, you're an asshole.
Oh, it depends on who you are, too. Like Dave
Sure,
Attell.
of course.
Dave Attell's one of my favorite comedians. And if you looked at his transcript of his act, he was like, he does this whole thing about little people where he says they're evil kind. It's almost like a short people,
Okay.
Randy Newman short
yeah.
people bit, but he doesn't call them little people. And I wouldn't even repeat the bit, but it's so hilarious because there is like one time there were people who were Latino in his audience and they didn't enjoy his act, and he goes, "What's the matter? Did Selena die again?" You know, so it's like he's viciously funny, right? So
this is the Rickles thing where nobody can really hate him for.
Well, Rickles, at some point, there was something anachronistic about, hey, the black guy's going like this, but he was a pure. You could tell that he was a loving person, and he was a funny person and a hilarious person, and that's the thing about people like Attell. So that's where I wouldn't want to make rules, but Attell has a great career. You know, it's not like the people who have great, like when they tried to get Colbert. When he said something about my Chinese friend, and it was, but you know the person's reputation, you know they're hilarious, you know where they're coming from, and I think those people get more leeway too.
Sure. I mean, well, also he has the pretense of character, right? Like he's doing a character,
Yes,
he's doing these things, and then the problem with that is with Colbert specifically, right? People on the right were convinced he was on their side. It's like, no, he's pretending to be goofy. He really believes this,
right?
Like, yeah, I just saw him I saw him with John Oliver a couple of months ago, maybe, the two of them together and on the show, and that felt like the real Stephen Colbert. Like just people talking about politics, talking about reality, but also just being themselves on camera, which is that weird thing no one does on television.
Right.
I think podcasts are much better at that, just because you can't help but relax after a while.
That's why I think podcasts got popular, was because you could hear people have a conversation. Like it reminds me of old radio, like in New York and stuff like that. I just remember another Martin Short line where he says, I read most of the scripts most of the way through, and I think the one about the cop and the small black guy, the young black guy, it's edgy but it has heart. Right. It's so good.
Yeah, he's so good. He is, and it's an unbilled cameo. It's one of those things.
Why is it unbilled?
Apparently, it was just the way that the financing was done, or the payment scale worked. It was better to do it unbilled because he's only in it for like 9 minutes overall, I think. Although his presence is throughout.
That is amazing.
You really feel it.
I feel him in there all the time, and that's so funny to me that he's only in there for 9 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, to make a really bizarre leap, it's Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. Like, he's not in the movie that much.
I never realized that.
Yeah, I think 40 minutes overall. I might be overstating it, but he's still won for Best Actor and Lead, and he permeates the film in the same way, that he's just constantly a presence. And Short is just more of a force for chaotic good, I think, than
he's the force for chaotic, because he's the force of like.
He's the devil. Like, he's there to tempt. Right?
Yeah,
He's there to just show you the way.
But the other guy, J.T. Walsh, is just pure evil. Yeah. Like, he's never gonna. Whereas Martin Short, you go, oh, this guy, he wants to mouth the things that people say, but maybe it's also because he's just likable in general.
Sure.
Martin Short.
You want him to be well-meaning.
Do you agree with this though? I've talked a lot about this movie, that the movie that he wants to make doesn't seem that great.
I know. Yeah. I think Ebert wrote that in his review at the time. He's like, is this going to be any good? And I think the stuff that we see does look pretty silly. Like, it looks square. It
looks kind of square, but I think it's just a matter of because there was no maybe way to show the depth of it if there was going to be any depth of it.
You can't suddenly pivot to 10 minutes of dialogue or whatever, I think maybe the one thing the film needs is a glimpse of it. And maybe it's like a very beginning of fantasy sequence, or we just never hear any of the dialogue. We never see any of it.
And he never describes it really
it's
that
just
well.
about people in a farmhouse.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe, and actually, that's not that there's a weakness in the movie, because I love the movie, but that could have maybe made it stronger if you got some kind of sense of what that movie was that he wanted to make.
Did you ever see David Mamet's State and Maine?
I love that movie.
Yeah, the way
That's the movie where he goes, so that happened.
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin comes out.
Wonderful Baldwin moment after the car crash. But there's this great running gag about what the movie is that we never really fully understand it. We get pieces of it, but they're delivered in this perfect kind of dropped-in moment. Just the whole, like the first 20 minutes is about, like, do we really need the old mill? And then finally you see the title of the script and it's The Old Mill.
And is it his wife in there? David Mamet's wife is in that movie?
I think she's in all of them. Rebecca.
She's good.
Yeah, I think so. She's the lead, isn't
I
she?
can't.
The
Yeah, I
lead
know.
actress in the movie.
I have blocked out so much. I was on a Dr. Katz with David Mamet.
Okay.
So and didn't meet him because there was a cartoon.
Sure.
But that to me is one of the most disappointing turnarounds I've ever seen because he's smart.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, it's that 9/11 come to Jesus moment where you go all in on the right wing terror, on the sense of how scared you are, and we need someone strong to protect us. And you can see it in his scripts, and you can see it like even Spartan is kind of about that.
Wow!
And it's just all about having strong people who come in and save you, and it's that the dichotomy in like the nurturing Democrats versus the strong father Republicans. Like he just goes all in for the strong father figure, and it broke my heart because
and xenophobia at its worst.
then the racism really starts.
Yeah, that's true with Bill Maher. That's true with so many different people.
Yeah.
For years on Twitter, I would begin these fights because it was like, I can't believe I'm defending organized religion. It's like I'm just defending people. That you're going to judge someone because they are a Muslim or because they affiliate with a religion is so foreign to how I was raised, and I'm getting in these arguments with people on Twitter. It's a weird alt-right thing.
Yeah,
but I don't think he's alt-right. I don't know what he is. I think he's calmed down Mamet a little bit about it, maybe, or no.
Mamet, I think I don't know. He hasn't said anything in a while, so maybe he just doesn't like Trump. The next time there's a good leader, he'll go for it. It's a real disappointment.
Isn't it amazing that there are a lot of artists who, towards the end of their, wasn't there someone who was like kind of a Nazi towards the end? Not T.S. Eliot, but there was a poet.
This is ringing a bell too.
Yeah.
Just sort of went all in for it.
When I look back in history, though, as a Jewish person, and I realize there's so much anti-Semitism that it was like people were considered. It was just, if you said, "Well, I just find Jews annoying," that was a good.
Yeah, that was
a good
simply an
position.
observation. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying. It's and that's back too. So great. We just, I think. It's that standard sop, right? Well, in uncertain times, we have no choice but to return to the things that we find most calming. That is white people. And I don't get that.
Yeah.
But there's this whole sense of, it comes up every time somebody mentions George Soros when they're trying to get out of an argument. Somebody,
right?
This family friend was trying to pompously tell me something once, and I said, Snopes discredited that.
That's
That's
George
not a
Soros
thing.
is. Well, they said he was a Nazi sympathizer,
right? Yeah, but so I said, Snopes discredited that, and his response was, "Oh, George Soros owns Snopes." It's like, no, he doesn't. Wait, why?
What's happened to you?
How can one person be this evil? Right? Like, I don't think Trump is he is a monster, but I don't think he's consciously evil, like a tentacle monster, the way the right is describing Soros. It's just that gives them a reason to fight. Like, it gives them an excuse. Trump is just an inept moron who told everybody what they wanted to hear and lied his ass off. And this is like, it's where we are in politics now, where if you just don't have any shame, you can win. And it happens over and over again. And if you have a boogeyman, and like Soros in this case, who's, what do they call it? The globalists now is what they're using for the Jews.
Yes, Jews.
Yeah. It's just the same language with different intonation.
Well, yeah. Someone told me on Twitter, I'm not white because I'm Jewish.
Okay.
So it's like I never even heard that argument before. Then they were trying to tell me, because they try and nail me the right sometimes. Sure. Because I'll say things like, I don't like white people. They smell funny, and all this kind of thing. Then they try and say, oh, you're not even white, so you're a racist now. So it's.
I don't understand.
I hope we survive this.
Yeah.
I just realized what a great title The Big Picture is now.
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't think about it. It takes me years to get these things. Just like to keep your eye on what you really want in your life.
Sure.
But I didn't think about that. I didn't even think about that I just thought about in terms of the movie he was making and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not bright.
No, I think things have to percolate.
Yeah.
But I think it's great that the film does have such a simple title, that is applicable on multiple levels, because that does feel like the sort of thing Christopher Guest has been doing all along, right?
Yes.
Like, he just sneaks in the big ideas in the guise of silliness or lightness. Even I remember thinking the first time I saw it that I hated the score, which is kind of
interesting.
woodwinds and goofy and happy. And the more I think about it, I think it works. I mean, it works like everything bad about a movie works better the second time, because your part of your brain is expecting it and it's okay. It's there. I think it's like it's the music that's like a Pied Piper music pulling him in. It's a lure,
that's interesting.
right?
Yeah, it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be beautiful. I also love the song. I don't know how much of who wrote that song.
The Pez People song?
Yeah.
Oh, it's McKean and Guest.
Oh.
Yeah. In fact, the Pez People themselves are actors they're miming the song, they're lip syncing the song that McKean and Guest are singing. So it's
you can kind of hear that. You can as you were saying that I can hear the way they sang in Spinal Tap. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember thinking, oh, this is too smart. Of course it is. Of course it's them. But then they wrote the movie, so of course they'd write the song. Like, it just made
so
perfect
good.
sense.
And the way they were able to convey, this is the thing I think is amazing about that movie, is that so many things could have gone wrong and it could have not held together.
Sure.
And so when we're talking about like how at the end of the movie you don't really necessarily think it's a great movie he's working on, that's not true about some of the other stuff, because you get the feeling that these Pez People could be great.
Yeah.
You get just from these little scenes, and that's hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole film is peppered with talent, right? Like and not the actors, but the characters are shown to have skills. Like, everybody in this can do stuff.
Yes.
And every now and then we get a glimpse of it. We sort of see like the way that Jennifer Jason Leigh's character has decorated her apartment, which is just insane with the flowers. but it's lovely, right? Like, it is an expression
really
of her
great.
creativity, and it's also someone who's been alone long enough that she's just built this thing.
She's an amazing person
wonderful.
because of the way she acts.
Yeah.
Like in that movie, is like, I think she must have came up with a lot of the
the physicality and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the line? I don't make movies anymore. I'm into ham radio performance art now, which is just like, it's a ridiculous scripted line, but she delivers it like she's just coming up with it. Yeah, she's wonderful. And then when you see the work that it leads to at the end, because it's people miming with snow and overacting, it feels like it might be silly. But again, we're not seeing the full context of it. And again, we have to believe that even if it isn't a good movie, he made the movie he wanted to make, and it's been
That's
worth
exactly
it,
right.
Like, that's the payoff.
And also the fact that they end this movie and doesn't make it seem schmaltzy.
Yeah.
It's not schmaltzy when he's working with his friend. It's just a small little nice ending.
Yeah, it's just warm, like that look between him and McKean as the camera, as the crane starts to go up. It just, it's.
How about when he says, "I didn't fight for you," and he goes, "I know."
Yeah,
I love that scene. I guess we all would love a friend like that, who would be like, "You were an asshole, you were a jerk, but I still understand. I'm still your friend."
Yeah, no, and
maybe that person doesn't exist.
I think it's Michael McKean.
I really do think so.
That really is Michael McKean.
I don't see that. I went on one audition for a Christopher Guest thing, and he's not warm. He was not warm.
Guest?
Yeah, Guest.
Okay.
Yes, and he's famously known for being. But it's like...
Is it like hyper-focus or something?
He might be hyper-focused, because it was Eugene Levy was in the room, and he actually laughed at something I said. Right. I was like, because I used to audition really terribly. I would go in, I hated to do the reading, so I would try to win with my personality, but then they don't care about that most of the time. They go, "Can you also do it in a script form?" But
can you also act?
So I think it is hyper-focused is what he is. It's interesting, though, because I think there's no better movies than Spinal Tap and The Big Picture. Can you think of any of the movies that were based on the style of Spinal Tap that were as good as Spinal Tap?
Oh, I don't think there are any.
No.
I think it is. Like, it is. Well, I mean, there's a thing called Bad News, which was in the UK, which is effectively the same thing.
Okay.
Some of the guys from the Young Ones as a terrible heavy metal band, but it doesn't have the scope of Spinal Tap, and I'm not even sure which one came first at this point. They both sort of arrived at the same time. But Spinal Tap, just in terms of rewatchability, unpackability, the tiny details, just look like just, if nothing else, the way the cold sores move around over the course. Like everybody has one here or there, but you can actually follow who's sleeping with who by the cold sore. It's just, you see a movie enough times and you start to notice the tiniest little things because you know the big picture, you memorize it.
Yeah.
And the last time I watched Spinal Tap, I was just realizing you can actually track who's sleeping with who by the cold sores.
The extras, if you ever get a chance, anybody, I recommend. It just goes on forever, and it's just all hilarious.
Well, there's a whole alternate cut of the film, right, with all the other takes they didn't use. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, oh God.
And then you get that creativity here in a much more kind of precise package because it has to be a conventional, romantic comedy or just a comedy about aspirations and all those things all those boxes it has to tick to be a recognizable mainstream film and still be good.
Yes.
Like that is the same journey that Nick is going on in the film, but Guest has to do it for real.
And I didn't even think about do you think that was studio influenced or is it the way he wrote the movie? He wanted it to be a more accessible movie.
I think I think he wanted to demonstrate that he could make a quote unquote real movie, like a proper movie.
Right.
Because Reiner's out there doing this major studio stuff. And he's just kind of quietly gliding along. And I think, I get the feeling it was important to him to make this movie his way, but I also get the feeling nobody cared enough to stop him.
Right.
It's just such a small picture that, it'll be a pickup. I don't think it was produced within Sony. I think it was distributed by them.
Wow.
They bought the rights or something. But I remember I wandered into a little theater. I saw it here at the Carlton Cinemas, which is this tiny little shoebox art house theater. It still is. Megaplex. Minor megaplex. There's 8 or 9 screens. And I went and saw it in the afternoon, and like this was a year after I left film school, and so it felt awfully painfully real.
Oh, it must have been painful to watch it.
It really was. Well, I mean, I recognized myself, and I recognized a bunch of other people. One of them has been part of an Oscar-winning production department, so it all works out.
Like a rival, or is it somebody you like?
No, she's a dear friend.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm pretending I can't talk about her. Her name's Alex Hooper. She worked on Shape of Water and a bunch of other stuff, and she's done an episode of this podcast. So listeners, go find that one.
Right. We're not hiding. We're not hiding the other people.
I have nothing to hide. But I mean, that is that is basically she is effectively Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, and it was so strange to recognize such a specific personality type, and then realize, of course, that's the other great thing about The Big Picture. As a movie is that none of this is unique. Like nobody is the only person having this experience. I think that's the thing that keeps me coming back to it. The sense that as exaggerated as some of it is, there is a quality to every person who believes himself to be an artist or believes himself to be creative. And we all see a part of ourselves. But what's great about it is you never see that part of yourself that you think you don't see the right part of yourself reflected. Like I bond with Nick, but I'm pretty sure I'm not him because I would fold and never not fold.
I see.
To be successful, I'm pretty sure that would be me.
It's so funny that you say that because it is interesting. It is interesting that about the choices people make and that's reflected in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, everybody is doing something for themselves. Even the executives are doing the thing that they think is successful, and they're soulless and heartless and empty because they've been in the business long enough that it's just scraped them all away.
The woman who takes over for J.T. Walsh, I don't remember her name, but she's so cold and she thinks and he is kind of an idiot. He has no idea what's happening and he has no idea. Well, he probably knows his pitching, trying to change it into other things is not going to work.
Yeah.
But it's just, I graduated college in 1978 and I started to do the music and then comedy. In 1989, I was still very, very frustrated. So it was really, it's inspirational. The other thing that's timeless about it is that it's like, I don't know, it doesn't indicate it doesn't reflect cell phones, but what it does is it does do car phones and it does music videos. So it's already getting into how we're all divided by the media and stuff.
The culture that we choose and the stuff that represents us or that we choose to believe represents us. Yeah. So before or rather, in order to finish up, the final question on the podcast is always the same, which is that is there anything from The Big Picture, I can't see how, that you have borrowed or used or stolen or just lifted as inspiration for yourself over the course of your career?
Well, I think Martin Short is a perennial influence on me, even if I might not reflect it in my style or whatever, but just his idea of and which he hooks up very well with Steve Martin when they toured together.
Yeah.
Just the whole idea of that. And it's what drew me to Letterman too. It's subversion without screaming subversion.
Right.
It's like saying this is all a bunch of nonsense. Whether Martin Short's doing Jiminy Glick or he's doing this character in The Big Picture. So I think that influenced me, but it also was just inspiring me as an artist. Not that I was ever put in those positions, but it was inspirational overall, like
I
that.
can see that. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Short is that he looks like he is a human person, but there's a maniac in there. Like the thing that he does in The Big Picture is he's like, I think, I mean, it's the. It was 2 years later. It's Albert Brooks' speech about the devil in Broadcast News in '87, right? Like
right.
He's not gonna look like a guy with red tail and fangs, and right. He's gonna be charming and offer you things. And in that case, he's talking about William Hurt.
Yeah.
What Short's doing is pretty much that, right? Like
right.
He is pretending to be, or maybe he is legitimately supportive. He's not really listening though, because he's got his own thing going on. And once you click on that, it all like. The whole world of The Big Picture makes sense. Like he's our introduction into just how absolutely open everyone is about how little they care, while saying how much they care.
I think you're right, and I think it more guided me. I think it's been more of an inspiration through the business of being a comedian, because it just shows you that there's no magic world where everybody's thinking on the same page and it's rational. There's always going to be this insanity, and you can be like the fact that he stayed with Martin Short. I thought was a cool thing. It's like he's not a bad guy because he's doing all these things. He's just who he is, and you could still have a career with these horrible people around. Not horrible, not him, but just the way the J.T. Walsh is.
Yeah, he can be the bulletproof vest.
Yeah,
like he can learn how to navigate him. So it is ultimately an optimistic film.
I think it is. It absolutely is. Yeah.
I just hope Nick's movie's a hit.
And he goes back with his girlfriend because she was really Terry Hatcher did not care about him.
That's right. And she and the real journey is the friends and all that. But the real point of the film is that he doesn't have to lose everything in order to be successful, and that he can just be happy in a quieter way.
Right. And one more thing I wanted to add was that I actually got fooled watching the movie. I remember getting fooled by Terry Hatcher or some of the actresses' interest in him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as they're going like, wow, they really seem to like him.
That's their job.
So that shows how little I'd been involved yet. And
I see. So
yeah. So I kind of was like, because they're coming on to him in such a, it's not like I completely bought it, but it just shows you how easily you could be swayed,
right.
And especially men can be swayed by a beautiful woman.
The attraction of the world.
The attraction,
the glamour of it all. Now we know better.
Yeah, everything's great now. Because of movies like that, we've solved all the problems.
My thanks to Andy Kindler, who you can hear regularly as Mort on Bob's Burgers and on the Thought Spiral podcast, which he hosts with J. Elvis Weinstein. His stand-up special, I Wish I Was Bitter, is streaming on Amazon Prime, and you should totally take a look at that. Thanks also to Mike Wilner. He knows what he did. You can find Andy on Twitter at Andy Kindler, all one word, and you can find The Big Picture on Blu-ray from Mill Creek Home Entertainment, although it doesn't have any of the supplements that Guest put together for the Sony DVD, which is now out of print. It's not streaming anywhere in Canada, which is sad, but in the US you can find it on Amazon and Google Play. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com, where in addition to my film duties, I'm now hosting a new podcast, Now What?, in which I interview Torontonians about the weird new normal of self-isolation in the time of COVID-19. You can still find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. Our theme song is by The Last Year, and if you like it, or the show in general, say so. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you've been enjoying us. It's not like we have anything else to do, and every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network, including The Big Story, where Jordan Heath Rawlings is still doing remarkable work documenting the nuts and bolts of the coronavirus crisis 5 days a week from under a blanket. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening. Stay inside, watch movies. I'll see you next week.